Greetings, everyone. I'm Mar. Once again, this is my opinion. We are now on episode 4 of Everybody Loves Raymond, Season 2, Mozart. Unlike a lot of the episodes, as I've said time and again, it is a very fitting title because it involves music. While classical music is not directly involved, Mozart is himself name dropped as part of a gag in the opening scene, so attaching his name for the title makes sense, especially since it involves Marie and her piano lessons. Now, I don't remember if off the top of my head if her teaching piano lessons has been mentioned at this part in the show, but this is the only time we directly see it until a later season involving a character that's introduced in season 5. Other than that, it's just alluded to. We see the piano, but we never see the lessons directly. But with the other guy, we only see the aftermath of one lesson and then the later results of it. We never actually see them sitting hammering out the entire lesson like we see in this episode. Lesson begins with Ray watching the game. What else is new? When Allie runs into the door, followed quickly by Marie, who is annoyed. You can tell from the moment she walks in. She's scolding Allie, "Don't you run away from me, young lady. Don't you run away from your lesson like that." And then, like in the Father Knows Least episode, she yells back at Marie, "I don't want any stupid lessons." Marie, of course, being like, shocked that she hears that. One of my favorite little gags in this episode is it looks like Ray is actually trying to interrupt the argument, like, hey, watching the game. Going with his sports above everything else mindset at times. And Deborah gets in and says, maybe we can let it go for today. And Marie storms out, and this is where Mozart's name is name drop. And as she puts it, if Mozart did not have discipline, he'd be one of those bang-ganging rapsters. And once she leaves, Ray turns it in. Mozart. But I can imagine that, especially if you see how he's portrayed in Amadeus. I can imagine that version of Mozart being like he'd take rap and just make it an art form. Well, once Marie is out of there, Deborah talks with Allie and says, if you don't want to do piano anymore, you don't have to. Ray at first is a little taken aback with this, like, really? After just a couple lessons? Ma says that she has good potential. She doesn't see that in everybody. I don't think she should just quit after a couple lessons. And then, of course, he brings up asking Deborah to marry him a couple times. Did he give up? Which I think, even though you can see why they obviously didn't use in the final episode, a line he says in one of the blooper reel takes is funnier. And that is, did I stop asking you to marry me after the restraining order? That would have added a darker spin to Ray and his whole relationship with Deborah. That would have been one of those things like when we see how they meet, it'd be like, Deborah, run. Run, eject. What's the safe word? Well, as we find out, part of the reason that Ray does not want Allie to quit is because when he was a kid, his mother gave him lessons, and he quit too, and he's regretted it. Maybe not constantly, but off and on when he's thought about it, he's regretted it since then. And it seems the main reason he quit was, who else? Frank. Pressuring him. He's like, I don't think a boy like him should be playing the piano, should be out doing sports. Which really shows Frank's old school mindset. It's like, there's nothing wrong with playing music, Frank. You ever think you could start with piano and then move to a different instrument and he'd go into a band or whatnot? But nope, Frank's probably too set in his mindset, in his ways. And he's like, nah, sports. Of course, that comes up later when him and Frank are talking about it, and Frank is like, you make a living as a sports writer now. I think what you mean to say is, thank you, Dad. To encourage Allie not to give up piano so soon, he decides to go get some tune-up lessons from his mother. And since it's been a couple decades, we really see how much of it Ray's forgotten. He's remembered some of it, posture and all that. Alright, seeing what music he was playing. And the last piece he was working on was the theme from Love Story, which by the end of the episode we do get to see him play. Which one thing I wonder, is that Ray actually playing the piano himself, or is that him miming and then the music coming from off screen? The reason I ask that is because the camera angle, it's not like 2.5 Men where every time Charlie's playing, it's over the camera so we can see his arms moving, but then someone off camera playing. We're literally seeing it. So it makes me wonder, is it the Amadeus route, bring it up again, where they learn how to mime playing it to the music to get the timing right? And then if there's any tweaks they have to make in post, they make them then. Because if he did that, I'd say Ray did a good job with it. But if he's playing, he did an even better job, because it actually sounds like he knows what he's doing, and he didn't just learn it for the episode. IMDb doesn't say anything, so I don't know either way, but whichever way they went, it goes flawlessly. But to lead there story-wise, he has to really relearn a lot of stuff. And that's the gag for this part of the episode, where Marie's trying to teach him and she's getting frustrated every time she finds an error. She's like, get up. We gotta get through the other book. Going back and back, going from theme from Love Story to like very beginner piano book thing where you're playing like Pretty Polly is a Polly, and even more basic stuff to where you're just getting the feel of the piano, the keys and all that. But then Marie gets frustrated. And of course, Ray has that heart-to-heart I mentioned earlier, where he's talking with Frank. And then he goes and has a better heart-to-heart with his mother, where she mentions, like, your father might have pushed it, but you're the one that lost interest. And I had to let you go. I didn't want to be like my mother, which she doesn't really bring up her mother a lot. When Marie complains about the previous generation, it's usually Frank's mother, where we find out that Frank's mother was just like her. So her relationship with Frank's mother is kind of like her relationship with Deborah now, which is like, really, you don't see how much of a hypocrite you're being? There's a couple times where she realizes it, but another couple times where she's oblivious to it. But with this one, as she brought it up earlier, her mother had big expectations of her when it came to music, which of course, having the shorter hand, she could learn the stuff, but she couldn't play it as well. So seeing that Ray had the ear for it, the hands, and could do it, she really wanted him to do it, but when she saw he was losing interest in playing piano, she let him go. She didn't want to be like her mother. I can imagine Marie's mother being like, you're gonna play the piano, give up sports, and you're gonna like it. But nope, she didn't want to be like her mother, so the moment Ray decided he wanted to go play sports, he's like, alright, go, do what you want. Now, of course, that's not keeping her from judging Ray when it comes to what he's writing, as we saw in the pilot episode. You know, the whole real writers should be writing short stories and poetry. Oh, we need journalists, Marie. There's a reason that freedom of the press is mentioned in the First Amendment. Well, they have a little heart-to-heart with their end, as we see in that scene I mentioned already, where Ray actually does play the theme from Love Story to show Allie what she could do and how great music can be. They go back in there. And then, of course, Frank kind of destroys the whole point by asking who wants to play t-ball. And the sad thing is, after this, we never find out if Allie actually continues with the lessons, even for a little bit, and then it's like, yeah, music's not for her, whether she just decides to give them up or not. It would have been nice if they had at least mentioned it once. The epilogue is Robert playing the drums, which was mentioned in a throwaway gag, and him getting a nosebleed from music, which, even though it's funny, I scratched my head at the logistics of that. Is like, why would music cause a nosebleed? Is it the nerves? I understand, like, heat causing a nosebleed, because this happened with me. And recently I got one after not having one for at least a decade and a half. One thing I could say about this episode from the time I first watched it to watching it on DVD is that they cut out the first scene entirely in syndication. And the episode begins when Deborah and Ray are talking to Allie after Deborah's found out that Ray doesn't want her to quit. And then Robert walks in, you know, vase, I need a vase. So they cut out the first scene entirely. So when I first watched this episode, I'm like, what? Allie quit lessons? What? I didn't even know she was taking lessons. Nothing. And so the whole setup for the whole thing of the episode is cut out. And for a lot of the later episodes that air in syndication, you notice they have a nasty habit of doing that. But then the scene that it starts with, you're like, okay, you're up to speed. But it's like, you missed the beginning part of the conversation. You're like, what were we talking about? Oh, okay. Continue, let's go. All in all, it is a pretty fun episode. Nice to see that little bit of character development and building on the relationship between mother and son. Of course, Robert mainly the jealous in the background, but it's nice to see him play the drums. Frank, he's mainly just used to progress the plot in that one moment where he comes in between the first lesson and the later part of the lesson. Deborah, you know, she's understanding of both Allie not wanting to play, but also seeing that Ray wants her to continue, even though he kind of feels down because he quit. He doesn't want her to quit. Otherwise, he'd feel like a hypocrite. So you can see she's kind of pushing him, you know, like, hey, if you don't want help her, you go. So definitely fits her character. Episode was directed by Ellen Gittleson, which she directed a lot of TV stuff. For Raymond, she's only directed 3 episodes, and it was this episode and the following 2, so 3 in a row, so nice little mildly stylistic continuity. And the episode was written by Philip Rosenthal. Definitely feels like one of his episodes, from how the characters act, to the humor, to the situation. And like a lot of the other episodes sprinkled throughout, this could have taken place in any of the first few seasons. But it definitely works better with Allie being the age she is and the characters being at the stages of their life. Sorry about that, folks. If this was later on in the show's run, when Allie was older, when Robert was out of the house, and a lot of the other stuff had happened, some of the little dynamics might have had to be tweaked, but it still could have worked. But like I said, it works better as an early season episode, especially in the second season. This is definitely an episode I watch every time I marathon the series. I don't skip it. And I can definitely say with disc 1 of season 2, all the episodes are at least worth a watch. Now, Raised on TV is definitely the weakest on the disc, but the ones after that, oh, they grow, and it's definitely one of my favorites from disc 1.